Good morning, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your first video blog of the day for Tuesday, July 21st, 2015, around 7:08 in the morning, Billerica, Massachusetts. Going to be another humid day. Some places 90 degrees, but Boston is slated for 87. But maybe they'll sneak up to 90 and be first heat wave in the city of Boston in 2 years. Some news to report: the Angels swept the Red Sox by a score of 7-3 in the doubleheader in the series. The Sox are slipping out of the race. And Staten Island, the Yankees beat Lowell Spinners by a score of 4-3. It's Happy National Junk Food Day, so all your junk food junkies love the sweets today and stuff, all the junk food. And that's about it on the news. My first video subject of the day is the review of the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view for WCW in 1996 that happened July 7th, 1996 in Daytona Beach, Florida. The main event was the Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and a special third mystery man facing off against Stain, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Lex Luger. One of the most shocking heel turns in history. Probably the best heel turn in history happened, but we'll talk about that later. And this pay-per-view was jam-packed. Before the pay-per-view, they had a dark match, was just seen in Daytona Beach, Florida, for the fans. It was Jim Powers, who was a famous WWE jobber, who was known for the Young Stallions tag team with Paul Roma. He beat Hugh Morris from the Dungeon of Doom. And then these matches happened on the main event, which was an hour before on TBS. WCW main event. The first match was the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott Steiner, facing off against Harlem Heat, Stevie Ray, Booker T with their manager, Colonel Rob Parker. The Harlem Heat were WCW World Tag Team Champions, and this was for the titles. And Steiners won by disqualification because Sister Sherry interferes. She returns after a couple of months off, and she starts a love affair again with Colonel Rob Parker and stuff like that. I'm surprised this match was not on the pay-per-view. The Steiners versus Harlem Heat. The next match was Bobby Rocker, hard-working Bobby Rocker. He beat Billy Kidman. And the next match was the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson facing off against Fire and Ice, which was Scott Norton and Ice Train. Ricky Morton won. The Rock and Roll Express won when Ricky Morton pinned Scott Norton. And then Fire and Ice continued to tease a breakup and stuff. And the last match on the main event was Eddie Guerrero, Latino Heat. He wasn't Latino Heat back then, beating Lord Steven Regal with a roll-up. Steven Regal thought he won because he pinned Eddie Guerrero 1-2, but Eddie kicked out and stuff. And those were the matches on the main event and the dark match. And these are the matches that happened on the Bash at the Beach 1996 pay-per-view, which was called by Tony Schiavone, The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and Bobby the Brain Heenan. The first match was Rey Mysterio Jr. facing off against Psychosis, two masked luchador wrestlers and stuff like that. And this match was guest commentated Mike Tenay, the Professor. Back and forth match between Rey Mysterio Jr. and Psychosis and stuff. Lots of action-packed and stuff. WCW around this time was bringing more and more cruiserweights in there from Mexico, luchadors, and this made a fun match. Rey Mysterio Jr. beat Psychosis with the Hurricane Rana move and stuff. With the 1, 2, 3. And both wrestlers shook hands afterwards. Great sportsmanship. Next match was a Carson City Silver Dollar match. It was John Tenta. I am not a shark. I am not a avalanche. I'm not a fish. I am a man. I'm John Tenta, facing off against Big Bubba Rogers of the Dungeon of Doom with the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart in his corner and stuff. This was a very awful match and stuff, and it was continuing the feud between Big Bubba Rogers and John Tenta. Ending of the match had Jimmy Hart try to climb the pole to get the Carson City dollars, the silver coins, but John Tenta threw Jimmy Hart over and then gave the scoop slam to Big Bubba Rogers, and then he got the silver dollars, knocked Bubba out for the 1, 2, 3, an awful match and stuff. This was still the transition from the old WCW to like the NWO era of WCW. The next match was Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, facing off against Hacksaw Jim Duggan in a tape fist match. Around this time, they were hyping up that Hacksaw Jim Duggan's relatives from Europe were tape fist champions and stuff. It's probably a gimmick for Hacksaw Jim Duggan to do and stuff. And also, Diamond Dallas Page's Lord of the Ring Battle Bowl ring was up on the line because he won Battle Bowl at Slamboree 1996. And this was an okay match and stuff. Like, Duggan knocked out DDP with the tape fist, but DDP got up and gave the diamond cutter to Hacksaw Jim Duggan for the 1, 2, 3. But afterwards, Hacksaw got mad and knocked out Diamond Dallas Page. The next match was the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags, facing off against Public Enemy, Rocco Rock, and Johnny Grunt in a dog collar match. This was a decent match, a hard-fought, hardcore match. The Nasty Boys and Public Enemy had a big feud in WCW in 1996, but, it was not that great. The Nasty Boys won this match when Jerry Staggs knocked out Rocco Rock with the collar and stuff, with the 1, 2, 3 and stuff. And that was it for that match. The next match was for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. It was the man of 1,000 holds, Dean Malenko, who was the current champion, facing off against Disco Fever. Disco Fever. Disco Fever. Yeah, 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 yeah. Disco Fever. Disco Fever. Disco Fever, yeah, 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 the Disco Inferno. A couple of weeks before this match, Disco Inferno was getting a lot of fluke wins because he had some guy distracting, dancing. That guy was actually nicknamed Big Sexy and stuff. And Disco Inferno was getting kind of a minor push because before he was kind of a comedy mid-card jobber, but he was getting serious about the Cruiserweight title match he had with Dean Malenko, and Disco Inferno gave a great effort in this match. It was like a competitive match, but in the end, Dean Malenko put the Texas Clover League on Disco Inferno, and Dean Malenko retains the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. The next match was Steve Mongo McMichaels with Deborah in his corner facing off against Joe Gomez. Joe Gomez was kind of disappointed because of Steve McMichael turning heel and joining the Fallen Horsemen. Joe Gomez says he looked up to Steve McMichael when he was playing football. This was an awful match. Steve McMichael wins with the Tombstone Pile Driver, and he puts one leg on Joe Gomez for the 1, 2, 3 debut match for Steve Mongo McMichael. Decent and stuff for like his one-on-one. The next match was for the WCW United States Championship. It was Nature Boy Ric Flair, the 16-time World Heavyweight Champion. Whoa! Well, he was 12-time World Champion at that time, facing off against Conan, who was the current U.S. Champion. Ric Flair had Woman and Miss Elizabeth in his corner, and this was, a decent match, back and forth. Conan actually put the figure 4 leg lock on Ric Flair, but Ric Flair grabbed the ropes. Ending of the match had Woman interfere. She grabbed one of her big high heel pumps, and when the referee was distracted, Ric Flair hit Conan with it, and then Ric Flair pins Conan 1, 2, 3 with the foot on the rope to win the WCW United States Championship. The next match was a grudge tag team match. It was the Giant, who was the current WCW World Champion, and the Taskmaster, Calvin Sullivan, with the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, facing off against Arn Anderson, the Enforcer, and the Crippler, Chris Benoit of the Four Horsemen. There was a stipulation: if Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit won this match, then whoever got the pinfall, if Arn Anderson got the pinfall or Chris Benoit got the pinfall, they would have gotten a WCW World Title match with the Giant on Nitro the next night, and this meant this was not really going to happen because the Giant was 7 feet tall and stuff, and this was like kind of a David and Goliath match, and it was a decent tag team match. It had like Anderson and Benoit like beat up on Kevin Sullivan a lot and stuff, dominating when Kevin Sullivan was in the ring. But when Kevin Sullivan tagged the Giant, it was all over. Arn Anderson got the choke slam from the Giant and got pinned 1, 2, 3. But afterwards, Chris Benoit continues to beat up on Kevin Sullivan until Woman of the Four Horsemen tells Chris Benoit to stop it, and stuff like that. Because in real life, Kevin Sullivan and Woman were really married at the time and stuff. And Chris eventually stopped it. I think maybe they were teasing Woman to join the Dungeon of Doom and stuff around this time, but it never came to fruition, and we know what happened several months later and stuff, but we won't talk about it right now because we know what happened eventually. And the last match was the main event for it was the Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, with a surprise mystery partner facing off against WCW's team of Steen, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Lex Luger. This match was an awesome match and stuff, but about a couple minutes into the match, Lex Luger gets knocked out and he's carried off on a stretcher. So it's a 2-on-2 match, and it was several minutes with the Outsiders, Hall and Nash dominating, and Macho Man and Sting dominating. But eventually Sting goes out and he's outside the ring, and the announcers were saying it was only down the run. But then all of a sudden, Hulk Hogan comes out of the back and stuff, and fans were cheering, and Dusty Rhodes was cheering, and Tony Schiavone was cheering, but Bobby the Brain Heenan kind of spoiled it for everybody. But whose side is he on? What are you talking about, says Dusty Rhodes and stuff. And Hogan rips off his shirt, cleans the Reign of Skull, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, who come back. But then Hulk Hogan does the most shocking thing. He gives a leg drop to Macho Man Randy Savage. And Tony Schiavone says, "Is he the third man? Is he the third man? Oh my God." And then Hogan gives the second leg drop. And then he waves Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to come in, and they beat up on Macho Man. And Bobby the Brain Heenan sold it like $1 million. Slowest shot to the world of professional wrestling, and he told you that Hogan was no good. And then they throw the referee out. Hogan does, and then Hogan does another leg drop, and Scott Hall counts 1, 2, 3, and Tony Schiavone says, "We're not gonna acknowledge that 3 count and stuff." And the fans were booing Hogan and Hall and Nash like crazy and stuff. And then Mean Gene Okerlund comes up and does the interview and stuff, and he says he was so shocked. But then Hogan goes on a heel rant saying he made WCW into WWE, and he's called Scott Hall and Kevin Nash the New World Order of Professional Wrestling, brother. And there were fans throwing stuff like crazy and stuff. It was littered with the ring and stuff like that. Gene Okerlund said years later that he got a bloody nose because he got a cup of Coke thrown in his face and stuff. He says he said to this in an interview years later, I'm not liking this heel turn. He said that. And then Hogan at the end of the interview says, what you gonna do when the New World Order comes wild? What are you gonna do? I gotta get my lawyer. That's what Okerlund says. He was joking about that. And then afterwards, Tony Schiavone says, "Hulk Hogan, you could go straight to hell and stuff." Perfect. This heel turn with Hogan was probably the best heel turn in professional wrestling history and stuff like that. And Hogan was a little backed off at first. I'm not really wanting to turn heel because he thought his merchandise sale would go down, but the NWO got so hot that it made him more money than ever before and stuff like that. And with like the third man with Hogan, it was probably the most obvious, but there was rumors it was even going to be Sting, which I don't know if that would have worked because Sting as a heel I don't know if it would have worked in 1996. When Sting turned heel in 1999, the fans didn't buy it. There was also rumors it was going to be Lex Luger because he was knocked out early in the match as the third man, but Lex Luger turning face and heel so many times that was a recipe for disaster. I even heard it could have been Bret the Hitman Hart making a surprise appearance because he was not under contract with WWE at the time, or Nature Boy Ric Flair. Whoa, but I don't know if he would have been NWO material. And this was probably one of the most memorable WCW pay-per-views of all time and stuff like that. The rest of the card was very solid. There was a couple of matches, that was kind of awful and stuff. And this was kind of this was the phasing out of the old WCW stuff with kind of the outlandish gimmicks and stuff, and the straight to the NWO era, which was probably the best era of WCW. They got one thing right. The WCW in this era was the NWO angle, and also Bill Goldberg and the rise of DDP and Sting, the Crow gimmick and stuff. This was the start of WCW becoming the #1 wrestling promotion. It almost knocked Vince McMahon and the WWE out of business and stuff. Maybe I'll do a video vlog one of these days of if WCW won the Monday Night Wars. That would be an interesting one. That'd probably be somewhere down the road. I give this Bash at the Beach pay-per-view an A. And I'll be back later for 2 more video blogs. First video blog will be about Dunkin' Donuts. America runs in Dunkin's. And the third and final video blog of the night is Joey Flacco, quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, a future Hall of Famer. And have a good day, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And like I always say, keep calm. And I'm a Julie Blood and Guy. And Molly Rosenblunt, a Fox 35 Rocks. And in the words of Vader, it's time. It's Vader time. Bye now.